first question for all of you, what is this?
A trophy.
Trophy, I figured that's what you're saying. Well, for the sake of today, it's a statue. So it's a golden statue. And back, in the Bible times, you hear all these stories about people worshiping statues rather than worshiping God. Or you've got the story of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who chose not to worship a statue. They chose to worship the one true God. Exodus 20, 2 through 3 says, I am the Lord your God, who brought you out of Egypt, out of the land of slavery. You shall have no other gods before me. How many of you have a statue in your house? I didn't think so. I don't have any statues either. But how many of you worship and pray to the statue all the time? Didn't think that was the case either. How many of you realize that there's something else that could possibly take the place of this statue? That could be something that maybe you worship instead of worshiping God. How many of you know what this is? Yeah, Xbox controller, video games. How many of you have video games at home and play lots of video games? Yeah. You realize sometimes, there could be this really difficult hard game and it takes you forever to beat the level or to get to a certain place. And so you spend hours upon hours trying to beat this level and get to this game. Do you realize that by playing this game so much, you could be worshiping this game as if it was an idol? If this video game takes time out of your life and instead of reading the Bible or praying, you're playing this video game. You spend all your time on this video game. You're putting that video game before God. Or if you don't play video games, maybe there's a TV show that you always have to watch, or you're just always watching TV in general. If there's something in your life that you play so much that it even gets to the point where maybe you tell yourself, okay, when I go to bed, I'll pray. Maybe I'll read the Bible a little bit. But when you get into bed and you start to pray, you fall asleep because you're just so tired. You spent all day doing other stuff. Or you spent your day playing video games or watching TV. And you think to yourself, oh, I guess I could be reading my Bible right now, but I'll wait and I'll do it a little bit later. And then it gets later and it gets later. And you're like, well, it's too late now. I've got to go to bed. I don't have time. You have made that video game your idol. So in the Bible, we read stories about them focusing on it. They worship a statue instead of God. And you may be thinking, I'm not going to have a problem with that. I'm not going to have other gods that I'm putting before God because I'm not worshiping a statue. But in reality, if you think about it, things you spend time doing instead of worshiping God or talking to him can be considered an idol. I want everyone to think of something in their life that may be an idol. Just think about it in your head. Think about if you spend too much time doing that, and it could take the place of maybe reading or praying. And I want you to think if you could make time to maybe instead take an hour out of your video game. Sit down and read the Bible or pray or even sing praises to God. Do something that's different than a video game, something that shows God that he is more important to you than your video game is. I know for me, lately I have a new TV show that I've started to watch. I get home and I sit and watch TV. While I'm doing my homework, I'm sitting and watching this TV show. And then it gets to the point where when it comes time to go to bed, I'm like, maybe I should have done Bible in there somewhere, or it's that time to pray. So I sit there real quick and do a prayer before I fall asleep. That's not how it should be. I should be taking time out of my day to show God that he is important, that he is the most important thing in my life, and that I can choose to not watch this TV show and worship him instead. So I want everyone to start thinking about that thing again. And for this next week, and hopefully you can push it into the next week, push it into the next week, and keep it continuing. Start to take time out of that thing and spend that time worshiping God. Not only will that make him happy, but it'll help you learn more from the Bible and get closer to God also.